The day they dragged her through town, the sky turned the color of old bruises. The dust rose in slow spirals around her boots as she walked behind the wagon, her wrists bound with frayed hemp that had already drawn blood. The rope bit into her skin with every jolt of the wheels, and she did not wipe the sweat from her brow. She would not give them that. Not the men who spat as she passed. Not the women who pulled their children close and whispered witch-like a curse. Her name was Mariah Kane, and she was 23 years old. And she had bought the Grissom farm for $17 and a handshake with a banker who laughed when she signed the deed. The laughter had spread like wildfire. A woman, alone, buying that place. The Grissom farm sat 3 miles northwest of Salvation Ridge, a town that clung to the edge of the Oklahoma Territory like a tick on a dying dog. The farm had stood empty for 6 years, ever since Silas Grissom had taken his rifle into the barn and painted the walls with his own despair. His wife had left in the night. The land had gone sour, they said, cursed. The well had run dry. The crops turned black in the ground. No one wanted it except Mariah. She had arrived in Salvation Ridge 4 weeks prior, stepping off the stage with a canvas satchel and a jaw set like iron. She did not speak of where she came from, did not explain the bruises yellowing on her collarbone, did not answer when the saloon girls asked if she had a husband. The banker, Horace Trimble, had looked her up and down, with eyes that lingered too long. "Work?" he'd said. "For a woman?" She had not flinched. "I can read and write, keep books, mend and cook." Trimble had leaned back in his chair. "What we don't got is anyone fool enough to buy the Grissom place." He'd grinned. "You got $17, girl? I'll sell it outright." The other men had laughed. Mariah had placed $17 on the desk. Money earned in 3 different towns, hidden in her hem and boot sole. Money she'd bled for. She had signed the deed with a steady hand. Mariah Kane, owner. The whispers had started that same day. She must be desperate, touched. Something worse. 3 days after she moved into the sagging farmhouse, the Brennan boy went missing. Young Timothy, aged 9, had vanished from the general store. Search parties combed the hills, calling until their voices went hoarse. They found him 2 days later, wandering near Mariah's property line, mud-caked and fever-dreaming. Speaking of the lady in the ground, and the door that breathes. The boy's mother had pointed at Mariah with a trembling finger. She did something to him. She's got the devil in her. The men came at dawn with torches and rope. Now she walked behind their wagon, bound and bleeding, toward the town square where a wooden post waited with her name already carved into it. Mariah Kane, witch. They nailed the sign around her neck, just as the first star appeared. The wood was rough-cut pine, still weeping sap that stuck to her collarbone. The word burned into it read, "Deceiver," in crooked letters, and they hung it from her neck with baling wire that pressed cold against her throat. Mariah stood tied to the post in the center of town, her back against the splintered wood, while the crowd gathered like carrion birds. Horace Trimble read the charges from a piece of paper that shook in his thick fingers. Witchcraft, consorting with darkness, corruption of an innocent child. His voice carried across the square, and no one met her eyes except to spit. She did not beg, did not weep. She had learned long ago that tears only made men crueler. The preacher stepped forward with a leather strap, blessing it with holy water from a tin cup. 20 lashes, he announced. to drive the evil out. Mariah closed her eyes and thought of the farmhouse, of the hidden door she had found beneath the rotted floorboards in the kitchen 3 days before they came for her. The door that led down into darkness. The door that whispered. The first lash split her dress and skin together. She bit through her lip and tasted copper. The second landed before she could breathe. On the fifth lash, a voice cut through the crowd, like a knife through silk. "That's enough!" The preacher's arm froze, mid-swing. The gathered people turned as one. The stranger stood at the edge of the square, his horse still behind him, a gray gelding with intelligent eyes. He was tall and lean, weathered like old leather, with a Confederate coat gone colorless from sun, and a hat pulled low over a face carved from hard years. A rifle rested easy in his arms. "This ain't your concern, mister," Trimble said, puffing his chest. The stranger's voice was quiet, almost gentle. "I'm making it my concern. She's a witch. We got testimony. You got a scared boy who got lost and a woman you wanted an excuse to hurt." The stranger spat into the dust. "I know how this goes." The preacher clutched his strap tighter. "You calling us liars?" "I'm calling you cowards." The stranger's eyes moved across the crowd, and men looked away. 20 against 1. Real brave. Trimble's face went red. "You defend her? You're complicit in her sins." The stranger smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Then I reckon I'm complicit." He walked forward, boots crunching in the dry earth, and no one moved to stop him. Something in his walk, something in the way his hand rested near his belt, spoke of violence held on a loose leash. He reached Mariah and cut the ropes with a knife that appeared and disappeared like magic. The sign stayed around her neck. "Can you ride?" he asked her softly. Mariah nodded, though her legs shook and blood ran warm down her back. "Then let's go." He turned to face the crowd, rifle now pointed at the ground, but ready. "Anyone follows, we'll have a different conversation." They rode out of Salvation Ridge, in silence, the stranger leading, Mariah clinging to the saddle horn with her ruined hands. Behind them, the crowd watched with murder in their eyes and fear in their bellies. 3 miles out, beneath the stars, the stranger finally spoke. "Name's Cole Bridger. And lady, you better have a damn good reason for buying that cursed piece of ground." The farmhouse looked like a mouth full of broken teeth against the moonlight. Cole helped her down from the horse, his hands careful around her shredded back. She swayed but did not fall. The sign still hung from her neck, the wire cutting shallow lines into her skin. He reached for it, but she caught his wrist. "Leave it," she whispered. "I'll burn it myself." He nodded and stepped back. The house groaned as they entered, floorboards singing beneath their weight. Mariah lit a lamp with trembling fingers, and the light pushed shadows into the corners where they waited like living things. The kitchen was bare, except for a table with 3 legs and her bedroll in the corner. Dust covered everything like a shroud. Cole stood in the doorway, watchful. "You gonna tell me why?" "Why what?" "Why you bought a dead man's farm. Why you stayed when they turned on you." His voice was rough but not unkind. "Why you didn't run." Mariah set the lamp on the table. Her dress stuck to her wounds, fabric and blood woven together. She reached up and unwound the wire from her neck, let the sign clatter to the floor, then lifted her boot and brought her heel down on it. The wood cracked. She did it again and again. until it was splinters and ash and meaningless. "Because of what's under this house," she said. Cole's hand drifted toward his rifle. "What's under it?" Instead of answering, Mariah knelt and gripped the edge of a floorboard near the iron stove. The board came up easy, and beneath it was darkness and the smell of earth and something else, something old. She pulled up 3 more boards, revealing a trap door with an iron ring, the metal spotted with rust, but still strong. "Silas Grissom didn't kill himself because the land went bad," she said. "He killed himself because he found this and couldn't live with what he saw." "What did he see?" "Come down, and I'll show you." She opened the trap door. Stone steps led down into black that the lamplight could not touch. Cold air rose from below, carrying with it the scent of minerals and thyme and something that made the hair on Cole's neck stand straight. He followed her down. The stairs went deeper than they should, 20 steps, 30, until they stood in a chamber carved from living rock. And there, covering the walls in careful rows, were names. Hundreds of names. Thousands. Scratched into stone with desperate fingers, written in coal and blood and hope. Sarah Whitmore, burned 1673. Rebecca Town, hanged 1692. Mercy Walsh, drowned 1701. Women's names, girls' names, a registry of the murdered and the damned, stretching back centuries, each one accused of something that was only being human in a world that feared them. And at the center of the chamber, untouched by dust, sat a wooden chest. Mariah opened it with reverent hands. Inside lay letters, dozens of them, written in fading ink, deeds to land, maps marked with symbols, records of women who had owned property, held power, refused to bend. "This is why they killed him," Mariah whispered. "Silas found proof that women owned this territory first, legally, before the government said otherwise, before men decided we couldn't." Her voice cracked. "His wife knew. She ran before they could silence her too." Cole stood silent, reading names that had been erased from history. "The Brennan boy found the door," Mariah continued. "Opened it, got scared and ran, started talking, and they decided I was the easier problem to solve." "Why didn't you tell them?" She laughed, bitter and sharp. "Tell them what? That their whole town is built on stolen land? That women had the deed first?" She touched a name on the wall. "They'd burn me faster." Cole was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was soft as prayer. "My wife's name was Elizabeth. They called her hysterical when she tried to keep our farm after I went to war. Locked her away. She died in that place, screaming my name." He touched the wall. "I came back to nothing." Mariah looked at him, truly looked, and saw the grief carved into every line of his face. "Help me protect this," she said. "Please." Above them, in the darkness, footsteps crossed the kitchen floor. They had been followed, after all. The men came through the door like locusts, hungry and righteous. Cole's hand went to his rifle, but Mariah caught his arm, shook her head once. 6 men filled the kitchen above, their boots thunder on the hollow boards. Trimble's voice boomed down through the open trapdoor. "Come on up, witch. We ain't finished with you." Cole's jaw worked. His finger rested on the trigger guard. Mariah could see the war in his eyes, the mathematics of violence. 6 against 2 in close quarters. She touched his cheek, gentle as rain, and mouthed the word, "Wait." They climbed the stairs into lamplight and leveled rifles. Trimble stood with the preacher and 4 ranch hands, men with rope-scarred palms and eyes empty of mercy. The banker grinned wide. Thought you could hide down there? Thought your devil's hole would save you? It's not a devil's hole, Mariah said quietly. It's a grave. For women like me. Women you erased. The preacher spat. Blasphemy. You hear her, boys? She don't even repent. Cole stepped forward, rifle rising, but Trimble's men were faster. Two of them grabbed him, slammed him against the wall, took his weapon. He struggled, but a rifle butt to his stomach folded him. They dragged Mariah outside. The night was cold and clear, stars sharp as broken glass. They had brought rope and a horse. The rope went over a cottonwood branch that reached toward the house like an accusing finger. They fashioned a noose with practiced hands. Mariah did not fight. She stood with her back straight, blood still wet on her dress, and looked at the stars. Any last words? Trimble asked. She turned to face him. You're building your town on stolen land, on murdered women, on lies. Her voice carried in the stillness. And one day, someone will remember. Someone will dig. And your names will be the ones that rot. The preacher slipped the noose over her head. They led the horse forward. And then small and clear as a bell, a voice cut the darkness. Stop! Everyone turned. A child stood at the edge of the property, barefoot in a white nightgown that glowed like a ghost. Timothy Brennan, the lost boy, the one whose fever words had started this. His mother stood behind him, hand over her mouth, but she did not pull him back. The boy walked forward, each step careful, deliberate. She didn't hurt me, he said. His voice was steady, older than his 9 years. I found the door myself. I went down. I saw the names. He looked at his mother. I saw Grandma's name, Grandma Ruth, the one you said died of fever. His mother's face went white. She didn't die of fever, the boy continued. They drowned her because she wouldn't give up her land. He turned to Trimble. Your pa's name is on a paper down there. He took it from her. He stole it. The silence that followed was absolute. Trimble's face twisted. Boys still fever dreaming, still touched. No. An old woman stepped from the shadows, leaning on a stick, her face a map of years. Judith Carr, oldest person in Salvation Ridge. I remember Ruth Brennan. I remember when she drowned. I was 7 years old. Her eyes burned. And I remember the men who held her under. Another voice, then another. Women stepping forward from the darkness where they had followed, where they had watched. Daughters and wives and widows, who remembered stories their grandmothers whispered, who had swallowed anger for so long it had become part of their bones. The ranch hands looked at each other, looked at their rifles. Slowly, one by one, they lowered them. The preacher's voice cracked. This is not. Cut her down, the Brennan woman said. Not loud, not angry, simple as morning. Trimble's hand shook. We had testimony. You had lies, Judith Carr said. And we're done with lies. A ranch hand reached up and removed the noose from Mariah's neck. His hands were gentle. He would not meet her eyes. Cole straightened, coughing, and moved to Mariah's side. They stood together in the cold night while the crowd dissolved like salt in water, people returning to shadows, to homes, to consciences that would not let them sleep. Only Timothy remained. He walked to Mariah and held out his small hand. In it lay a wildflower, roots still attached. For the graves, he said. Mariah took it. Her fingers closed around his. She nodded once. The boy and his mother left. They found her 3 months later, kneeling in soil that should have been dead. The garden grew where the cottonwood had stood. Mariah had cut the hanging tree down herself, Cole steadying the trunk while she worked the saw until her palms bled and her shoulders screamed. They had burned it on the spring equinox, fed the noose to the flames first, watched the rope curl and blacken into nothing. The ashes they scattered over the trap door, a blessing and a burial both. Then they had planted. Wild flowers first, the kind that grew stubborn in hard places. Then herbs that the old women brought in cloth bundles, whispering names of grandmothers as they pressed seeds into Mariah's scarred hands. Sage and lavender, columbine and prairie smoke. Each plant a memory, each root a reclamation. The garden covered the ground above the chamber of names, and in the center, Mariah had placed a stone. Flat and wide, smooth river rock that Cole had carried 5 miles on his back. On it she had carved with patient hands, "Here lie the names of those who were erased. Here grows proof that we remember." The visitors came quiet, like deer to water. At first just 1 or 2. The Brennan woman with her son, bringing honey and bread. Judith Carr with her stick and her stories, sitting on the porch while the sun went down, speaking names into the dusk. Then others. Women who had swallowed silence. Girls who had questions their mothers could not answer. Mariah did not turn them away. Cole stayed. Not because she asked, but because he had nowhere else that mattered. He rebuilt the porch, replaced the rotted boards, fixed the well until it ran clear and cold. At night, they sat by the fire and did not speak of the past, only of what seeds would go in come morning, what fence needed mending, what ordinary miracles could be coaxed from cursed ground. The scars on Mariah's back healed crooked white lines that pulled when she stretched. She did not hide them. They were proof, same as the garden, same as the stone. Trimble left town in the summer, quiet as a thief, his shame too heavy to carry. The preacher stayed, but his congregation dwindled to old men who needed someone to forgive them. The ranch hands, who had lowered their rifles, became the ones who brought lumber, who helped dig the irrigation ditch, who nodded to Mariah when they passed on the road. Not forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement. A crack in the silence wide enough to let light through. On the anniversary of the night they nearly hanged her, Timothy Brennan returned. He was taller now, his voice beginning to crack and deepen. He carried a wooden box, carefully carved, and inside were letters. Letters he had copied from the chamber below, every word transcribed in careful script, sealed and addressed to the territorial governor, to newspapers in 5 cities, to anyone who might listen. "Mama helped," he said, shy and proud together. "She says the truth don't care if it's convenient." Mariah held the box like it was made of light. "You did this?" "We all did. Lots of us. The women, mostly." He looked at the garden, at the flowers moving in wind that smelled of rain and growing things. "Grandma Ruth should have had this, should have been able to keep what was hers." "She can't," Mariah said softly. "But you can help make sure it don't happen again." The boy nodded, solemn as an oath. After he left, Cole found Mariah standing in the garden, barefoot in the soil, her face turned toward the sky. The wire scars on her neck had faded to thin silver lines. The sign was ash and memory, but she still carried the weight of what had almost been. "You all right?" he asked. She did not answer right away. A hawk circled overhead, lazy and free. The herbs released their scent into the evening air. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote sang. "I bought junk," she finally said. "That's what they told me. That's what they laughed about." She looked at him, and her eyes were clear. But under the junk was the truth, and under the truth were the names, and the names grew into this. She gestured at the garden, at the stone, at the farmhouse standing solid against the sky. "So no, I'm not all right. I'm scarred and angry and tired." She smiled then, small and hard-won. "But I'm here, we're here, and that's enough for today." Cole took her hand. Her palm was rough with calluses, and marked with rope burn that would never fully fade. He pressed his lips to her knuckles, gentle as prayer. They stood together while the stars came out, one by one, naming the darkness. The garden grew. They say, if you listen close on certain nights, you can hear the women singing up from the stone. They say the land remembers what men forget. They say Mariah Kane bought a cursed farm for $17 and found beneath it the deed to her own salvation. They say a lot of things in Salvation Ridge now. Some of them are even true.